Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Firehorse Academy. Thank you for joining me. I'm kind of on the fly here, and this is, happening more increasingly that the downloads are coming, and I'm just kind of processing it as I, am making the video. Usually, I have a better idea of exactly where it all is headed. However, this stuff is coming in hot, so let's talk about it. That one of the problems that we have as human beings in communication is that we want to fix problems through the logic field. We want to push things through a paradigm that does not serve us anymore. It doesn't work anymore, to come from the logic of old, where we think our way through problems. You will not be able to successfully anymore avoid thinking through problems and leave it at just that, because emotions are up to the surface in everybody's world for a reason, because that's where we are in the ascension process. That's where we are in the human consciousness evolution of that. The rising of the consciousness means that everybody's being tapped into their most vulnerable and most emotional places to find out, where they need some tweaking in their system. And 1, 2, 3, as we are fundamentally here, learning how to work with the new system that's installing itself, the crystalline grid, etc. And so it doesn't matter if people understand those concepts or not, because we're going to operate out here as a teacher fundamentally in spiritual mechanics and, working with people in communication. I understand that. However, out here, we know on a mass level far less about what's happening than the people who do. Okay, there's a huge difference. However, there are people who would like to know more, and the way to teach them is to show them how to move out of trying to fix problems anymore through getting people to use their rational thought, because rational thought being put through their most triggered spot gets you the least evolved place in them. It gets you the least evolved place in you, because that's the whole point. However, if we don't understand that right off the top, or we can't jump into that concept, because that's pretty bold to tell somebody, well, this is just an ancient old, just bazillion years old thing that you're not really going to understand, but go ahead and buy my bullshit. That sounds like bullshit, happens to be the truth, and will not float well in a world that's locked into the matrix. However, could begin the deconstruction of that by starting out with fixing conflict from the correct position to begin with. There is no conflict or war or anything else in opposition to something else that's going to be fixed in the old paradigm the way that the age of Pisces did it. There is nothing about that, because an entire system is being replaced. There's been a big giant cosmic takeover. The corporate cosmic takeover is happening, that no, we're going to have to take this ship, and put it in our hands for a little while. And, as that shift is happening, consciousness is required to move with it. That's why you see what's happening going on, is it's pushing people to discover within themselves. And they're not understanding 333 because of a very fundamental disconnect with how we're thinking. We think if we write down the pros and cons, we've got the right solution. Or we think if we go and explain to someone, this is why you're a total monster to live with and I can't stand you. There's a very logical reason. And assuming that your logic track and somebody else's on a generic just basis is already assuming quite a lot, and assuming that you're somewhere as a light worker, an advanced, healer of some kind, or a quantum, grid worker, those kinds of people that are really in some astral spaces seeing stuff and understand a big picture a little bit better, overall. Those people, you're gonna have to be, in very, very small chunk, big letter, stuff like kindergarten with explaining things. Or do not waste your time if you don't have the opportunity to retrain a mind about the logic you're using. You're asking me to step into the age of Pisces and join you there on that power differential, the predator triangle that we are breaking and we no longer are forced to live in. 444. If you don't want to join, that's fine. However, trying to logic that conversation, there isn't a bridge of that. It has to be, there isn't a bridge through the brain. that's going to get you there. It has to be brought through the feeling space. When we say ask someone, I find this in, therapeutic conversations with people when I'm working. I find a lot that people will say, ask, what is the conflict? What would you say is your biggest concern here today? And they'll say, well, I think he should. And I think that blah, blah, blah. And see how it automatically already takes what the issue is, puts it into this cerebral space where you've got the wrong detachment from it. You've got the wrong detachment, which goes into depersonalization. And then suddenly he becomes a monster. You're ready to, poke him in the eye with a pencil every time you see him. And many times even when you don't. So, this is a better process to stop playing with people that we need a different conversation than somebody who already doesn't understand. It took me a long time because I assumed everybody was like me and that we all had the same logic track 555 as me, and we do not. I'm a service to others person, and the kinds that are service to self, they love me, they love you if you're one of those. And the people who keep calling me, bothering me in the morning, Bo trying to offer me a freaking installment loan, that kind of crap. That is just, your logic is bad for you to be in the middle of what we're in now, pimping your story some more. Don't nobody care about your broke ass problem or your broke ass life. That's just the way it is. And see how it gets real depersonalized about some person who's not named Bo. Some robot sent me a phone call, but it depersonalizes the actual human beings who are so wrong, so twisted, and so out of touch with anything below, much less beyond their cerebrum stuff, their cerebral intake, to just be money grubbing and skipping this process, using the burn of the fuel down there in the lower nature, which really just wants to make money in the midst of what is happening here. That's what you're seeing, and why it is critical to deal with that kind of bullshit at a real lethal level. I cut it off early and cut it off really far out. As soon as I sniff it, it's no, that cannot come into my world as that, because me trying to move into a space where somebody's going to depersonalize me, try to detach me because they've detached and separated from their heart. They have no governance. There's no governor between their burners and their brain, and they're coming hot. Not anymore. You could get away with that snot about 20 years ago, maybe, slightly. However, this day and every day it continues to pressure away with volcanoes exploding and earthquakes. And, you're not catching the drift here, Bo, that I'm not interested in an installment, anything to help me get into a worse position than I might already be in. Pimping the story some more is somebody who clearly, you will not get through the door on something that is that ignorant. 808, unplugged from anything that I want anything to do with, and deeply plugged into a very cerebral space that they are grabbing hard. The rats are running and they are grabbing everything, because on a soul level, where this shit really matters and all this other stuff doesn't, then it's telling them, yeah, you can scamper, you can run, bunny, run, and you can play rabbit with the gun. And no, you're not that. You're not a rabbit unless you claim the fact that you're scared as hell, and that the rabbit holding that gun, yeah, it ain't no fun, because that rabbit has no discretion, no discipline, no moral compass whatsoever, driven by a logic that just took all my humanity away by calling you worthless and bringing me that business. And I'm going to return fire in normal conversation, average conversation with humans. We're going to return fire and let each other know how much that we're not seeing humanity. You were never an infant who is precious and, beautiful in the world. You were never that. You were just always this piece of fill in the blank, or fill in the blank with what other virility, vile virility. That's a strange combination. I'm not sure what that is. Very vile that has a lot of virility to it. That's probably what was trying to go. It has a lot of seed in it to grow, something that you're in a logic train that it is really coming down. And I understand why you're desperate to keep the tent up and keep Clowntown going, because it serves you. And the takedown of that, as it's coming down, that logical conversation is going to sound dumber and dumber even to you, because your soul knows that on a conversational level, energetically, this is out of balance, and you are creating more karma for yourself and your whole entire, chaff nation that wants to play this way. It's fine with me. I don't get the luxury of judging you for it unless I want to join you a little, and I don't. However, I can discern very clearly that that's some ridiculosity that's going to have to stay with you and not leave any of that residue with me, which means that very severe conversations come with, no, I speak from my heart center and I include my brain. I don't just leave it in here. See, that's the schlub I used to be. Because I'm just, heart-centered me, and then logic up this way with what the logic being fed to me is of people who understand how to work that system. That, no, we're keeping you up here, even though you really make your decisions from here and then push it through here. That's going to leave you crazy. And it did. Left me in and out of hospitals, taking pills all day long, trying to understand what was wrong with me. Not a thing. Logic of the heart, there isn't any. It will make no sense sometimes, but I will cut a person off, just sharply get rid of them if they, 1111, if they become a threat to me in here, not in here, because I've sat across this table from people who are actively threatening my life when I didn't know, because I was coming from here trying to give them another, piece of it, trying to give them another chance, trying to do this. And they're actively working to stalk and destroy, because that's what that does. And there is zero logic to a heart that's trying to understand, how is this person that I share blood with doing this? I don't understand. There isn't any. The one right here is the heart, which has to push it through. Your heart is so broken, you're not seeing me as even having one. I have to get away from you. And I'm not going to tell myself some story and wait until I'm homeless and broke and have nothing left ever again. I'm going to pick this up and realize that, wow, friend, I was wrong in a lot of places. Yeah, and now I know where I am correct. And I also, by understanding where the imbalance really truly is, who owns it, and where to make sure that I don't pick that up for anybody else anymore and don't ask them to carry my bags anymore. When I'm clear on all that, I don't care what happens to somebody else's busted logic about how they arrive into my world believing some entitlement to be here, or entitlement to behave in a certain way because their logic train took them there. Take a different train that takes you away from here, because that doesn't bring you here with any landing pad. There's no platform for dumb shit to land. There just isn't. There's no, stupid place in logic that sounds good to a cerebrally based person who's never going to connect their heart and wants to power through, especially with that lower burner action coming hot and heavy. Or seductive. We're going to go either way. However, I've seen that sit right across the table from me, and within days, absolutely do something to eviscerate me. Whoops, you don't have that much money anymore. Oopsie, it's mysteriously missing. Or oopsie, you don't have any more mail. Yeah, and not seeing that logic, the logic of that turns into, well, it's logical. Now I'm going to have to punish that, because obviously she's not pulling into what is obviously what's necessary to do for you to keep serving me, and for you to keep serving this situation the way that I engineered you, modeled you, molded you, and shaped you, and expected you to be. What's wrong with you? Because clearly there's nothing wrong with me. Well, no, sir, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you in this terrible ass model. However, there's something wrong with me standing here somehow buying it, because we're family, you're my boss, you hold my whatever. You don't hold anything that's that valuable to me, because if you take my breath from me, that's a whole karmic thing that I already know is going to be a problem. So that's just not my problem. And anything else that isn't rightfully coming to me, if somebody wants to snatch me so hard or beat my ass so hard and they manage to get that far in the door with it, then I'm going to let something happen that needs to happen to come in here, and we're both going to learn some stuff before it's all over with. And that's exactly, in my world, what has happened. And people walked away with their logic shaken with, how did that happen? They can't do that to me. That's so-and-so. I've heard that. I can't tell you. How dare you? How dare me what? Exert my right to not follow logic that takes me into a wall and lets you, crawl up a wall on top of me while you're climbing to your success of what you think success looks like. That was the old way. And in the old way, man, you were stellar at it. You get all kinds of props for it. But today, we ain't on that shit anymore. Go away. So, it hurts feelings, I guess. However, I'll take my broken heart and deal with that on my own. Because just because I told people to F off doesn't mean it didn't hurt my feelings, and it still doesn't. I still tell people, you're going to have to go away now. And new people that I meet that I just know, yeah, oh, you're sweet and it's going to hurt your feelings. But no, because playing with people who have logic trains that don't match up, you're asking me to follow you through your space here while you've got no connection. There's a depersonalization when you don't involve your heart. There's an instant depersonalization. And most of us, quite frankly, at least anybody I used to hang out with hard, and why I changed my venue, is there is great disconnection and great power up here. We can cerebral this stuff. We're going to be sapiosexy, except it's not really sapiosexy. It's quiet violence that sits down and parks itself across from you and says, don't worry. I'll make sure that you're taken care of in this process. Oh, don't worry. You'll always have everything you need. You got me. Call me. Let me know. And then you start asking about, yeah, I'm letting you know. Oh, whew, there's the white rabbit running, guns flying. And when you say, so the next conversation, so you really didn't mean that? You won't have that conversation because the logic is, well, duh, that's me. That's what I do. Didn't you know that before you woke the hell up and decided you didn't want to do that too? Oh. And then their logic will not invite you back for the conversation to fight for that position because it makes no sense to somebody who's in nonsense. However, we have to know that that's the gaslighting and the shit show right there. And so, I like to let people know that I'm walking away from why, that here's some inconsistency that doesn't serve a relationship with me. And I'm at least one person that's giving you honest feedback about why. If I feel inclined to do that, if I feel inclined to cut somebody sharp and cold, it goes clean, smooth. Bye, I'll never see you again. And I don't need to know because it's an energetic thing that's coming from here. And me trying to shove it through the logic first to get here to find resolution with it, nope, I'm gonna find resolution right here. How's my heart feel when I think about this person, this situation, this something? And I'm gonna marry that up with something else that I'm given in, outer space somewhere that the team gives me, if it's relevant and when it's relevant, which is, often enough to make it relevant. However, often enough that I don't need that. I can get that whole feeling of, ugh, nope, and it's already, gone. No, blocked someone recently that I'm hoping I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, that's what's wrong, is you want me to come chase you down, and that's been nothing but that. And we ain't that tight. We aren't that, for me to come chase you down and ask you why your butt hurt that I'm not responding to you. It's a quiet quit. Take the hint and move on. However, it's already told me what I knew. In my heart was true because my cerebellum, my thinking part, my logic, my frontal lobe got busy with trying to find a reason why this sweet little old parasite that wouldn't go away without, being blocked. Go away. Take the quiet quit as the hint that it is, because it'll hurt your feelings less than when you get freaking blocked. However, that's not my journey. It's not my story and not my logic to work out or unask. So thank you very much for your time. Got all kinds of turned up with that one. I do, because people get hurt not understanding something. I spent 50 years being victimized in a system of, victimization where it was just a clerical error with, yeah, no, you're not required to be here. This is bullshit, but you're buying the story because it's a loyalty thing here. And there's no logic in that. There's absolutely no logic from here about why you would be doing this in a precious place with yourself, bringing precious into where people eat precious for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and every snack in between. And oh yeah, don't think about leaving anytime soon or getting lean. No, those two don't work well together, which is why I'm here. I never am in the hospital anymore. I don't take any meds, and I don't weigh over 300 pounds. So there's something to this. I'm going to go with that because, damn, my life certainly improved when the bad logic left and stopped listening to the good logic of intelligent people who obviously knew more. Intelligent people who worked their sloppy stuff better. Take care. I'll see you again next time. And you're divine? Absolutely fine and banging, smacking, looking really good. Enjoy it. And please develop that through here so that this will make more sense to you, which is where logic needs to rest, not where somebody else developed it for you. That's how we become critical thinkers of other people instead of just critical thinkers. I think you're weird. How about, how do you feel about that person? I feel weird that they're wearing a certain shirt that I don't like. Okay, well then go have that conversation with yourself instead of narrowing it down to something so small and tiny and kindergarten. Okay, yeah, next time. Bye.